working with a nonprofit, and our community that I lived in back in Lake City, I would do a Christmas home tour every year, and I would organize it, and we would always pick a nonprofit. So I knew that I could come up with some money. It wasn't like I was selling Amway or anything. I was good to it. It's like, but I was talking about kids and orphans, So I was like, I think I could probably do something. And so we we had such little seed. I know you've been very sweet to tell us about our faith, but we joked because we just thought maybe if we could just give like $1,000 a year, like maybe if I could raise $10,000, I'd be so happy, and so we had such low standards, and girl, we just are so grateful that 7 years in, you help about 5 to 6 families a year, and we've given over about $350,000. And so it's just been so sweet to see how the Lord has almost, I imagine him with his hand on his hip saying, wow, you need to trust me more with this, because I found families that on the flip side would say, okay, I don't think I'm too old to adopt, or I don't think that's what the Lord calls us to do, but I would love to come to your event, or I would love to buy a t-shirt, or I would love to come to your fun run, or whatever event I was having. And so in my brain, it was very simple. If I had people who need the money and I had people who have the money, what if I just connect the dots and begin that bridge part? And so in response to that calling in 2017, even before we brought on a home, that's what's so crazy about it. We had our first event literally just, right when we brought her home. And it just, so each year we've just been working to give scholarships to families who've been called to adopt. And then we also aspire to share stories of people to be able to inspire others that are considering or looking ways to help children have a forever family.
Well, it is so inspiring. So I'm on your website and I'm looking at it, and you have some testimonials here, and I want to share one that is on your website because I think that our listeners would really be encouraged by hearing it. This is from a dad. A dad wrote this story. He said, our story is very similar to something like a lone miner who had devoted his entire life to painstakingly search for that one precious gem, which he knew deep within his heart and was out there buried behind darkness and yet has to be unearthed. My wife Charlotte and I had been married for 6 years before we decided to begin the adoption process that eventually led us to our wonderful daughter. During those first 6 years, we suffered greatly through a narrative of infertility, which we are still learning to endure. In 2011, we began to consider more seriously an idea that had off and on popped into our hearts and minds throughout that time. Maybe God is wanting us to adopt. I don't want to ignore here just how reluctant I was at times to accept this as our story. It didn't make sense. It wasn't our plan. It wasn't my plan. I was more comfortable to continue blindly swinging my pickaxe than to give it over to God. But I was tired, and my wife's conviction toward this alternative was infectious. I was soon reminded that God sees clearly while we see dimly. And so our adoption process formally began in early 2012. I'll never forget the feeling I got when Charlotte called me about the possibility of adopting our daughter. After she explained the case, I knew without hesitation that this match was in fact our daughter. All other matches that we attempted before didn't have this level of peace and affirmation. It was truly providential. We immediately left what we were doing and headed out of state to meet our daughter. Now, the clouds of our story didn't immediately clear, and rainbows and sunshine didn't miraculously fill our days. We only moved to a new trial. Our daughter was born premature and spent her first weeks in the fighting for her life in a NICU. But as hard as that was, and it most definitely was, as we had many anxious nights full of fearful and lonely tears, we never doubted it being his story for us. And when hasn't a precious gem been unearthed from the dirt and muck to then be cleaned and refined? It was most definitely a difficult refining process, to be sure. This story is a beautiful story, so much so that we've considered it again. But who knows, aside from God, what we do know is that Ruby is our precious gem. Oh, I'm going to cry. God found her, preserved her, and continued to cherish her, for her, and through us. This is the kind of family that you're helping, Laura. This is a family that you've helped through your nonprofit. What is your hope? What do you see God doing with this in the future?
Well, and actually this family, they had gone on to do another adoption, and we were able to help them with their second adoption as well. So super
praise
sweet
God.
story, super sweet couple. I know I need to do some updates to remind me, but I think storytelling reminds me of our testimony. Scripture is clear that people will come to know the Lord by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so Jordan is his dad's name, and he is so precious with his words, but it is his testimony to truly be able to give it to give God the glory. And that's what I love. That's what I hope to inspire with anybody, that through God we can do hard things. And just because it doesn't look like everybody else's family, and just because we don't have the 1.8 children that the average is, and that we thought differently, and that we're not afraid to say yes, that's what I hope to inspire people. And again, we'll go back to that quote by Louis Giglio, to be more than just a good family, to really do great things for Him.
Well, what are ways that people can be involved and support Inspiring Orphan Care, Laura?
So we have multiple events throughout the year. We also have monthly donations. So people kind of, to give monthly donors to where they just go ahead and just have like a $20 a month automatic donation. And those people are just a great foundation because they just believe in the cause. And then when we have our events, we are in the early process of planning my next event, which would be a Kentucky Derby themed in Waco, Texas next year at Baylor's presidential suite at the McLean Stadium. And so we are looking to just, again, raise money, come to an event. Businesses can get involved because we are a 501c3, so everything is tax exempt. And so we're looking for donors, businesses to partner with us, families who are willing to donate, and obviously people to come. And then another way is I cannot do it without my volunteers over the last 7 years. I have wonderful friends and family that if I just say, I need your help, they just say, okay, we're here, whatever you need, from our gala to our fun runs. I have just people in my back pocket that I cannot do without it. And then the lastly is just our prayer warriors. Actually, Jordan, his mom, Sheila, is my biggest prayer warrior, and so I know she's always praying for our event. She's always praying for the specific needs that I need to be able to cover these grants, because here's the deal, Jessica, every year I get so many applications in. I mean, and it breaks my heart because I want to be able to help every single family, right? And so to be able to have more awareness, more people involved, to be able to build that bridge between the needs of these families and the donors is really what my heart's desire. And so those are some of the ways that people can get involved.
It reminds me of that scripture, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And thinking the need is there, Laura. You and I see it. You mentioned earlier working on a grant, and you and I worked on the same grant where we would see kids who were separated from their families in foster care, and we were working to try to either equip the families to be reunited or help the kids get adopted. And we see so much need, and we see a lot of families who want to help. But I'm really glad that you said what you said earlier, that it can be awkward to say it's really expensive, and we've talked before to other adoption advocates who have talked about remortgaging their house, and this is not an inexpensive process. And so being able to help, even if you're not called to an adoption journey, if God has blessed you with finances to be able to help families who are doing that, or just prayer, like you said, is the most important thing. And when I pray, and I want to pray for you right now, Laura, let me go ahead and I just want to pray for you. I feel led to do that. Dear God, I just thank you so much for Laura. I thank you for her family. I thank you for the obedience that she has demonstrated in her life. God, I thank you for your faithfulness and for all of the details that you have worked out in her life and through her ministry. We thank you for Anna's life. We thank you for the nonprofit Inspiring Orphan Care. God, I pray for those families who are in the early early stages of considering an adoption journey. God, I pray that you would give them wisdom. I pray that you would put people in their life who would speak words of life and encouragement and equipment to them, God, that they would be equipped with the knowledge and the resources that they need to follow the obedience to that call. God, I pray for those families who are in the heart of it, who are in the middle of their adoption journey, God, and are struggling with the trials that come along with that, with the difficulties. God, I pray that you would meet them in their point of need, that you would equip them to be compassionate